You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin.
Hello, and welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast, where we discuss your favorite stories through the lens of Joseph Campbell's classic monomyth from his opus, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and Christopher Vogler's modern adaptation from his book, The Writer's Journey.
A murder most foul. Suspects are legion. The motives are myriad, shifty eyes and shifting feet. But who can untangle the web of lies and piece together this puzzle of clues? We have picked 3 murder mysteries for this month's Who Done It poll, and you, our patrons, choose the killer. In third place, innocent of all charges, is Robert Altman's 2001 film Gosford Park, which received, for I think the first time ever, 0 votes.
Ouch.
Nobody suspects.
No Altman fans in the crowd.
Very disappointed. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's written by Julian Fellowes, who went on to write and create Downton Abbey. Second place, with 36% of the vote, is Jonathan Lynn's 1985 murder comedy based on everybody's favorite murder mystery board game, Clue.
I wanted that to win, but I also am glad it didn't because I didn't want to write 4 different resurrections.
4 different endings. Well, what we would do, we would just pick the standard theatrical release ending. I know they did mix up. That's the one cool thing about Clue is that they filmed 3 or 4 different endings.
Yeah.
And would distribute them randomly to cinemas. And so you never knew which ending you were going to get.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool idea. And the winner, with 64% of the vote, is Rian Johnson's 2019 film Knives Out.
This is true for every story we discuss, but I'm going to repeat it specifically for this film. If you are sensitive to spoilers and have not seen Knives Out, stop listening to this episode at once. This is an awesome murder mystery, and nothing gets spoiled more than a murder mystery. So come back after you've had a chance to watch the film. You won't regret it. Knives Out is so good. It was released November 27, 2019, Thanksgiving weekend, and probably would have been number 1, but for the fact that Frozen 2 was already in theaters. That sounds like motive to me. I saw that with my kids in the Philippines. It was awesome.
Knives Out?
Frozen 2. Produced on a $40 million budget, Knives Out grossed more than $312 million worldwide.
Knives Out being a murder mystery about a wealthy patriarch and his large, squabbling family, stars a huge ensemble cast. I'm going to list maybe the top 10 here.
Okay.
So we've got Christopher Plummer as the aforementioned wealthy patriarch and murder victim, Harlan Thrombey.
You do as I say, and everything will be just fine.
Daniel Craig as private detective of questionable provenance, Benoit Blanc.
I observe the facts without biases of the head or heart. I determine the ark's path, stroll leisurely to its terminus, and the truth falls at my feet.
Ana de Armas as Harlan's nurse and caregiver, Marta Cabrera, who, depending on the family member you interview, is from Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, or Brazil.
Oh my God, I'm just pure adrenaline right now. I feel like I swallowed bees.
Jamie Lee Curtis plays Harlan's eldest daughter, Linda Drysdale, née Thrombey.
If you think I am dumb enough to be baited into talking family business, into shit-talking my baby brother in front of a police detective...
She is married to Richard Drysdale, played by Don Johnson.
And you're gonna hate hearing this, but it's true. America is for Americans.
Don't point at me.
Where's Martha? Is she still here?
Oh my God, what an awesome performance by Don Johnson. He was so good. I want more older Don Johnson in my life.
Their son, Ransom Drysdale, the black sheep of the family, is played by Captain America himself, Chris Evans.
Eat shit.
If I
Eat
wasn't
shit.
practicing,
Eat shit.
I would slap that smug smile.
Definitely eat shit. Eat
shit. You can all eat shit.
Michael Shannon, excellent actor as well, plays Walt Thromby, Harlan's youngest son, and the head of the publishing company that publishes Harlan's books.
It's like I can still feel his hand on my shoulder, passing the torch.
Toni Collette is Joni Thromby, the widow of Harlan's middle child and expert deployer of vocal fry.
Totally.
Yeah, it's skincare, but it promotes a total lifestyle, self-sufficiency with an acknowledgement of human need.
I think it was a character choice, though, don't you?
Oh, it totally was. She doesn't talk
Also,
like
she's
that.
making her second appearance on the podcast.
Right.
After being mom in The Sixth Sense.
Mom. Just mom.
Yep.
All right. Lakeith Stanfield plays Police Lieutenant Elliot, who, along with Trooper Wagner, played by Noah Sagan, accompanies Benoit Blanc throughout his investigation. That's just half the cast, Jeff, but my tongue is dry and swollen, so I'm going to stop speaking now and turn it over to you.
Knives Out is written and directed by Rian Johnson. Johnson received an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay for penning this script, but lost to Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won for Parasite. I like Rian Johnson. I
do too.
I know that The Last Jedi is controversial.
Polarizing.
Yeah, I have problems with it, but I thought it was brave to do what he did and to grab Star Wars by the balls. And I thought it was enjoyable.
Wow.
I liked Looper very much. I loved the sequel to this movie, Glass Onion. And this movie...
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, I got to take my dad to a screening with the cast at the DGA for the SAG nom committee. It was so much fun. And this movie is impeccably written and directed.
Okay, Jeff, I suspect this is going to be a chonky boy, so let's get started on our analysis. It was the podcaster in the recording studio with the XLR cable. This is the hero's journey of Knives Out.
The journey begins with the ordinary world, where we see our main character in their status quo normal world. Dan, in a murder mystery...
Here we go.
That's right off the bat. In a murder mystery, the protagonist is often, dare I say, usually, the investigator, acting as a catalyst hero, not changing much himself, but changing the world and the characters around him.
Yes.
But in this film, I think Marta Cabrera is at least the co-protagonist, because we see a lot of the journey through her eyes. We empathize with her. We go on the journey with her. So my approach is going to be to consider both heroes as we move through this episode. Murder mysteries can be kind of dry and intellectual, and I think Rian Johnson's choice to have a really emotionally drawing co-protagonist made this movie more than it would have been. Marta Cabrera is a young nurse working for famed novelist Harlan Thromby. She is kind, conscientious, extremely competent, and beloved by her employer. Even his adult children, their spouses, and one of his grandchildren consider Marta part of the family, or at least that's how they represent it.
Right.
Now,
I'm already thinking back to the political conversation.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Benoit Blanc is a renowned private detective with an outrageous Southern accent, a gentleman's manner, and a penchant for cigars and finding out the truth by following the arc of gravity's rainbow. The setting of this film is almost a character unto itself. Harlan Thromby's old Gothic mansion, which the police detective says is basically a clue board. Ransom later refers to it as their ancestral birthright. And Benoit Blanc says, no, your dad bought this from a Pakistani real estate developer in the 80s. It's such a great... Rian Johnson breaking the tropes. So the house consists of a hall, a lounge, a library, a study. We don't see a billiards room, but we assume it's there. We meet the house in the first shot via a slow-mo push-in as two beautiful German shepherds come running toward the camera. And then we cut to inside the house, all these static shots of countless novels with Harlan Thrombey on the spines, various knickknacks, and way too many creepy dolls.
It must be a nightmare to dust that place.
Oh my God. Yeah, poor Fran. She's delivering croissants and just dusting 24 hours a day. Dan, this murder mystery starts off so fast. That's where I drew a circle around World of Common Day.
Okay. Much of this movie is told in flashback.
Yes.
So I saw a lot of the elements of the journey out of order.
For sure.
I included elements of the family, like when we're introduced to all of the different characters, the children and the grandchildren of Harlan Thrombey via police interview. And we kind of get to learn who they are, what they do for a living, their place in the hierarchy, their thoughts about each other. I also included that type of stuff in World of Common Day.
Totally agree. I think that's very fair.
Call to adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge, rendering them unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. So in a pre-title sequence that you've discussed half of already, we see Fran, the housekeeper, attempting to deliver breakfast to her employer, Harlan Thrombey, enters his attic office and finds him dead on the couch with his throat slit and a pool of blood on the carpet beneath him.
That carpet really tied the room together.
We are then introduced to Marta as she startles awake, probably from a nightmare of some kind, as she gasps for breath. Shortly thereafter, she is called by Walt.
Literally called.
It's Harlan's son. Hi, Walt.
Hi, Martha. It's Walt. Would you mind coming to the house early? The police have a few more questions for everybody.
I had Benoit's off-screen call to adventure that he references later, which is...
Who hired you? I do not know. An envelope of cash showed up at my apartment yesterday with a news clip on a Thrombey's death.
An envelope, that worked.
An envelope of cash.
Right. Anonymous. He does not know who has hired him.
I'm your Huckleberry. It's very close. You gotta... There's a... You know...
If I can't solve this murder, I don't think I could bear it.
I've got 2 suspects. One for each of you. Refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to engage in the adventure. We've got refusal from within and refusal from without. Marta's refusal, I see, is mostly coming from within. And the first little moment, this is such a human moment in the script. Walt says the police want her to come in for more questioning. And she says, what? And that what happens so much in real life. She heard him. She understood him. She just heard something she didn't want to hear. And we say that word to deny what just happened. My favorite refusal from within. So if Marta's adventure here is to get away with accidentally killing Harlan, to escape blame so she can continue her life and not get her mom deported, then she has to keep many, many secrets. The problem? Lying literally makes her puke.
She has a regurgitative response to mistruthing.
What a great character flaw for someone who's the suspect for murder. Benoit's refusal comes from without. If his journey is to find the truth, as he interviews the family and the employees, everyone lies to him.
Right.
Every single person lies to him about something. I had a lot of those initial interviews in refusal, but yeah, all the flashback, you're right, all of that stuff is establishing the world in which this adventure takes place prior to the murder. The danger here in this analysis is that so many of the plot points are integral to the mystery that listing everything that's relevant. My notes, Dan, are longer than the screenplay for this film. I don't know how he outlined all this. He must have cases and cases of index cards in his shed. So I'm not entirely sure how to go from here. I mean, I guess the biggest point of these interviews is that we get hints about what each person's motive might be.
Right.
Because everyone has a potential motive.
Physical evidence can tell a clear story with a forked tongue. And as we can see from this morning, everyone can lie. Well, almost everyone.
Moving on to the meeting with the mentor. The hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. Joseph Campbell refers to this section as the supernatural aid. Now, as you already identified, Marta has a physical condition that causes her to vomit if she tells a lie. I think this becomes something of a supernatural aid to Benoit because he can use her as a tool during his investigation.
Absolutely. She is a magical biological lie detector.
Yes.
And she knows everything. So she's the perfect,
Right.
She absolutely is supernatural aid.
Yes.
Gastrointestinal aid.
During this conversation on the porch between Benoit and Marta, when we discover this unique condition that Marta has,
Yeah.
Benoit also surmises that Marta, who was originally hired as a part-time nurse, but pretty much became full-time because Harlan needed not just more medical help, but a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So Marta has been Harlan's confidant.
Yeah.
And is aware that Harlan has cut his entire family out of his will.
We also find out in this scene, Richard was having an affair. Benoit asks her point blank about it. She says no, and then she vomits. And then we see a little flashback of Harlan showing Marta pictures of Richard in a car kissing a woman that's not his wife. So now that's ostensibly his motive.
Right.
We do learn other motives. Walt is the publisher of Harlan's books and really wants to make Netflix series and adaptations, but Harlan says no, no, no. And then we watch as Harlan fires him from the company.
Then, for Benoit and also for the audience, Lieutenant Elliot runs through the events of the night for Benoit's benefit.
Right.
This is where a lot of the setup happens. The sleuthing begins. Party ended at 11:30. Marta took Harlan upstairs to administer the medication, and I think this is kind of necessary to run down. I'll do it as fast as I can.
Yes.
The stairs to Harlan's room creak terribly. Linda, who sleeps in the guest room beneath the stairs, is a light sleeper and so was awakened every single time somebody used the stairs that night.
Yeah.
First, Joni heard a thump above her, went upstairs to check on Harlan. Harlan says, "Oh, we just knocked over the go board." Second, Marta came down the stairs 10 minutes later and left. Walt, who was smoking a cigar on the porch, noted the time as midnight. Third, 15 minutes later, Harlan came downstairs for a late night snack. Walt saw him through the frosted window on the porch and told him to go back to bed. Meg then came home, went to bed. Walt and Jacob went to bed shortly thereafter. Around 3 a.m., Meg woke up to the sound of the barking dogs outside.
Yes.
Went to the bathroom and then went back to bed.
Yes.
Lieutenant Elliot insists, based on his information, that Harlan's death was a suicide.
Harlan slit right through his carotid. We saw from the blood spat patterns that they were uninterrupted, meaning it's almost impossible for anyone to have been around him at the time. He's the one who cut his own throat, all right? I don't know why we keep going over this.
So that I saw as meeting of the mentor for Benoit Blanc.
Yep.
For Marta, her mentor moment happens, I think, when she has accidentally administered the incorrect medicine dose to Harlan, resulting in his imminent death, and he tells her exactly what to do to get away with this, so that it looks, because he's now going to draw the knife across his throat and make it look like a suicide.
Harlan, we have to call the ambulance. We don't have time.
Listen to me.
Mommy.
Now, if what you said is true, I'm gone. There's no saving me. We have 6 minutes. We have got to get you out of this. Your mom is still undocumented, and if this is your fault, she'll be found out and at best deported, and your family will be broken. But we're not going to let that happen, are we? Huh? But you have to do exactly what I tell you.
And he walks her through, here's what you have to do to get away with this.
Absolutely 100%. The special world is the adventure of surviving the investigation, and Harlan tells her how to survive in the special world. I absolutely agree. Crossing of the threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. The crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. Benoit The way I see it, those initial interviews are really just him feeling out the scene, trying to decide the threat of the crime, investigating the investigation. And those are his mentor moments when he's learning the rules of the special world. But the moment he actually commits to the adventure, I think, is when he reveals to Elliot and Wagner that he doesn't know who hired him. The envelope of cash showed up at his apartment. He says, "It makes no damn sense. It compels me, though." He's let the cops in on his secret. He's recruiting them for his team. He could have told them right off the bat, but he held back. Now he's ready. That's when he asks Elliot to walk him through everyone's whereabouts at the time of death. So I think that's his crossing. This is when he's committing to the adventure. Marta's crossing of the threshold is when she sits down in front of the donut of knives for her official interview. Because this is when she starts weaving the web of partial truths, which Harlan advised her to do.
Okay.
I can tell you got different stuff. I want to hear it.
My crossing the threshold for Martha was just her executing the plan that Harlan told her to execute in order to get away with this. And then we see a very funny sequence of events where she screws up every single step of the way.
Right. I can see that. Well, Dan, that brings us to the end of Act 1. I'm impressed we got it done that fast. I hope that we didn't leave holes in the donut that will later becomes holes inside the hole, inside the donut.
I hope that it was comprehensible. This is why we highly encourage you to have watched this film so that you know the story already. So if there's any gaps in what we're saying, you're filling them in, but you're still following our thread of the journey.
This brings us to the end of Act 1. Dan, let's go get a coffee refill and talk about our side quests.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the side quest at the Campbell Cafe. Jeff and I have our fresh cups of Joe. What have you been up to since the last episode?
I read 3 books, Dan. 3. I read Sea of Tranquility, which is just a gorgeous, extremely complex speculative fiction novel by Emily St. John Mandel. It deals with pandemics, simulation therapy, and possibly time travel. It takes place in 3 different time periods set centuries apart. And given how much you liked Cloud Atlas, I think you would really like this book.
Yeah?
I don't recommend books to you that frequently, but this one, I think you'd love it.
What made you read it, first of all?
I'm working on a speculative fiction novel, and I Googled like mad and found this one, and it sounded like the right kind of... when you write a book and you try to sell it, you have to have comps, right? Comparisons. My book is like this, but different.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to read the market a little bit, and that's what appealed to me.
Okay.
At the airport, on the way to my vacation, I found a copy of Starship Troopers, and I bought it, and I finished it.
You never read it before?
I think I read it when I was a teenager. I think my dad had beat up, but I read it. I loved it so much. I loved it.
Love Starship Troopers.
I know that book is adventure and military intrigue, and it's first person. It doesn't seem like it was written 60 years ago. It really doesn't. Finally, I read Atomic Habits by James Clear. My schedule this year just got driven over with the bus. My work habits, my workout habits, I went through a real rough mental health period and just kind of like blew up my life. So I've been really searching for ways to rebuild it. And I asked my sister-in-law, who reads nonfiction ravenously. I said, what's your favorite book on habit building? And she named this immediately. And she said it was the most actionable.
Okay.
So that's 2 5-star nonfiction books in a row for me, with Deep Work by Cal Newport being the last one. So I'm going to, having finished it, I'm now going to go through it and actually do the homework and put it to work in my life. It was so good that I've got homework to do to get the most out of it. So I look forward to...
Do you have a physical copy, or did you do an audiobook?
I bought a physical copy for that reason, because when I read Deep Work, when I listened to Deep Work, I immediately went out and bought a hard copy. I think I'm just going to do that with nonfiction books now, because it's hard. Here, look at the chart. And then they describe the chart, and it's worthless. You need to see it.
I will say that in Atomic Habits, he does do a good job of when there would be a chart or graph or something in the book.
Yeah.
He says, to look at this graph, go to Atomic Media or atomichabits.com/media, and you can actually see the physical thing rather than him describing it to you.
Yeah, his website is nuts, and if you sign up for his email list, he sends you emails. Hey, day 1, here's what you do. Day 2, here's what you do. So it's great. Dan, what quests did you indulge in?
Well, anybody who has been following the motion picture industry is aware of this last month, the cinematic event of the year, Barbenheimer. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer and Greta Gerwig's Barbie were both released on the same day. The internet turned this into an event. I mean, originally the studios were like competitive about it, but then it became a thing where everyone was like, we're going to see them both the same day.
Yeah.
We're going to dress in costume. It became a thing.
Yeah.
And I did not see them both on the same day, but I did see them 1 week after the other. So we first saw Oppenheimer. Jeff, this is a 3-hour film.
Mm-hmm.
It does feel long, but it kept my attention the entire time. This is a brilliant movie. I think this will win Best Picture. I think Chris Nolan will finally get a Best Director Oscar. I think this will get Best Adapted Screenplay. Cillian Murphy is going to at least be nominated for Best Actor, if not win. Incredible movie. The next weekend, we saw Barbie, which I was surprised Michelle wanted to see, but she had Barbies growing up. She had a bunch of, she said she had like 50 Barbies. She had like all of the different variations of the dream house and all of the cars and like even the motorhome. She would, instead of playing Barbies like you're supposed to play Barbies, she would do murder mysteries, which totally ties into this episode. She and her little sister would set up the city of all their Barbie houses and stuff, and then one of the Barbies would be found floating in the pool. And then it was, who did it? How did we...
That's amazing.
So she was really excited to see this movie. Jeff, I haven't laughed this much in a movie in years.
Oh my gosh.
Barbie is hysterical. It is so self-referential. It is so self-aware. Mattel actually produced this film. There are jokes in this script that I am shocked made it past their top brass. But I think it shows a really great awareness of the cultural effect of Barbie, both good and bad. And they've owned it. And they've allowed Greta Gerwig to tell this story, which both reveres and also shows the warts. Barbie has earned already over $1 billion with a B. There are only 52 movies in cinematic history that have earned more than $1 billion at the box office. Barbie is now one of them.
So she has to be the highest grossing... Oh, yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Greta Gerwig is the highest grossing woman director.
Yes. She's the only female director with a movie that has earned $1 billion at the box office.
Oh, that's so great.
Yes. It's great that she cracked that ceiling.
Yes.
So, highly recommend both films, Oppenheimer and Barbie. What a revitalization of the theater-going experience.
Dan, what a wealth of media we consumed, and now it's time to move on. Well, let's return to Studios Z and G for Act 2.
Act 2 of the hero's journey begins with the road of trials, or tests, allies, and enemies. Having crossed the first threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. So if we're talking about Marta as hero, she already knows her allies and enemies. I really thought everyone's a shapeshifter.
That's exactly what I have.
There are, my enemies line is completely empty.
Yep.
And the shapeshifters are the entire Trombi family.
Yes.
Family. I said family with a B.
Family.
Family. Oh boy, the tests. The night of the memorial, all of the police questioning has been done. The housekeeper, Fran, who found Harlan's body, is telling Marta about a Hallmark movie called Deadly by Surprise with Danica McKellar that doesn't actually exist as far as I can tell.
Jeff Garvin, actor moment.
Oh, here we go. Did you audition for Deadly by Surprise with Danica McKellar?
My very first job that got me my SAG card was The Wonder Years.
Yep.
Danica McKellar was the co-star of that. She played Winnie. That concludes Jeff Garvin, actor moment.
Okay, so while Fran is telling Marta about this, Marta has a flashback to Harlan's birthday party, during which the family is engaged in a spirited political debate about immigration. Richard calls Marta over to ask her opinion, but then they all overhear the end of the argument between Ransom and Harlan in Harlan's office, where Ransom says, "Are you out of your goddamn mind?" and he storms out of the house. Now we cut back to Marta, present day, at the memorial, and she starts having a panic attack. Fran and Meg grab Marta. They take her into the sitting room, where Fran pulls a joint out of her secret stash, which is hidden in the clock over the fireplace. Marta declines the joint, so Meg takes a puff and throws the rest of it into the fireplace. At this point, Meg then tells her Uncle Walt to tell Marta what they talked about. So Walt comes in and says, "You've been good to Dad. You've been good to all of us. We're going to take care of you financially." So after Marta has composed herself, she goes outside and she encounters Benoit Blanc sitting in the dark, smoking. And this is when he tells her something is afoot with this whole affair. And he references gravity's rainbow, how it's the natural trajectory of an object falling back to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
This governs his philosophy of detective work, too. He just finds the thread and he follows its arc and he finds that the truth just lands at his feet. And at 8 a.m, he wants Marta there with him as he begins to conduct his investigation of the grounds and of the house.
Wait, Detective, why me?
I trust your kind heart. Also, you're the only one who had nothing to gain from Harlan's death. So how about it, Watson?
Oh, boy.
What?
All of that you just mentioned,
that
whole thing is my approach to the Inmost Cave.
Really?
Yeah, point for point. To me, the test sequence is Marta's interview with Benoit and all the flashbacks. This is a huge test for Marta.
Because you said that was your crossing the threshold.
I said her sitting down in that throne of knives is the crossing.
Okay.
So the interview itself is a test. Can she keep her promise to Harlan? Can she tell fragments of the truth in the exact order and fulfill his last wish that she exonerate herself? Can she overcome her lying vomit thing?
Okay, I follow you. I had skipped ahead because I had put that as crossing the threshold when she actually executes that plan. This is the challenge with this movie because so much of it, again, like we said earlier, is told in flashback.
This is a test for Benoit, too. Can he tease out the truth from the person who knows it all?
Mm-hmm.
I would say she mostly succeeds. He appears to fail, but of course, he's collecting all this knowledge as he goes through. So he may not be tying it together at the moment, but he's putting the pieces together behind the scenes. In his mind, he's connecting the pieces.
If executing the plan itself that Harlan has worked out for her, I think those are mostly failures. Because she screws up every time. He says,
"Drive out the gate. Then to avoid the security cameras, pull off the road before the carved elephant."
Wait, was it before or after?
After the carved elephant.
No, he said before. Was it?
The after for the carved elephant.
Oh, shit.
And she misremembers and turns off while still in the view of the security cameras. So she's caught on tape.
I was referring specifically to the interview with Benoit. She doesn't get caught. She doesn't fess up.
Right.
That's a pass. So yes, the things that happen in the flashback, I agree. But she manages to pull it off. It's just that she leaves a trail of clues by accident.
Yes. The broken trellis, the mud on the windowsill and down the carpet, all of that stuff are clues that she has left behind of her actions.
Her tracks, the video, all that.
The tracks in the mud at the gate, yes, all of that stuff are failures. But Harlan has said, we hear it in flashback, Harlan says, I know there's something I've probably missed, but I trust you to figure it out in the moment. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing, now we have to see, okay, well, here's all these clues, all these screw-ups. What?
You're jumping ahead to... It's okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight a few moments without going through that whole sequence bit by bit, because you've really highlighted the important parts. This is where we really get a sense of Harlan and Marta's relationship and how warm it is and how pure it is. At one point, he says, why can't I ever beat you? They sit down to play Go, and he says, why can't I ever beat you? And she says, this is because I'm not trying to win. I'm just making a beautiful pattern. And he says, that's elder abuse. I'm going to call the AARP. And she says, don't make me get the belt, abuelo.
Kinky.
And the rest of that sequence is what you just mentioned, her screwing up step by step, trying to commit the crime without leaving a trail. At the end of it, you hear this little gurgle in her stomach. And she's like, you can tell she's holding back. And Benoit says, that sounds about right. And then she runs to the bathroom and throws up. That was a pass that she waited until she got to the bathroom to throw up. So that I had that sequence as test. And then what you just mentioned was my approach. So I'm wondering where we're going to overlap in Ordeal, which is your segment.
So I'll just finish my thought here. Okay, I get it. You're saying that what I'm about to say is your approach to the inmost cave, but I thought that Marta attempting to cover up all of her screw-ups are mostly successful tests. Let's move to approach to the inmost cave, and then you can enumerate all of those things, and we'll talk about the approach.
Approach to the inmost cave. The hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. My approach is what you listed as tests. The memorial sequence, the flashback to the party, Marta being ambushed by Benoit, because this all leads up to what I see as the ordeal.
So is the ordeal her covering up all of the clues that she left behind?
Yeah, this is her continually facing getting caught. If one thing goes bad, if Benoit picks up on one clue, that's it, she's caught. So, and this whole horrible day of just one after the other being confronted with the thing that could make it all fall apart. That's the beginning of my ordeal. There's another sequence that I also call ordeal.
Yeah, okay. I saw all of that as the approach to the inmost cave, which I think means that your reward is my ordeal. Oh gosh. Okay, well.
So what's your approach? I've outlined my approach. What's your approach?
I just said what my approach was.
Oh, the walkthrough. Okay. So why don't you tell me your ordeal then? Because that's your segment that we're moving on to.
Okay, the ordeal. The hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome their worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. I get how her having to cover up during the walk of the grounds and the house, having to cover up all of the clues that she left behind, yes, like you said, is an ordeal, because if Benoit picks up on any of those, it leads closer to her being a suspect. For me, the ordeal was reading of Harlan Thrombey's will, because that is what turns the entire family against her.
I, Harlan Thrombey, being of sound mind and body and yada, 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 I hereby direct that all my assets, both liquid and otherwise, I leave in their entirety to Marta Cabrera.
Oh, you little bitch. You little bitch. Did you know about this? Were you in on this from the beginning? No, I just want to know. What were you doing? Were you boinking my father? Boinking?
No. I think everybody just needs to cool it.
You had sex with my grandpa, you dirty anchor baby.
I also have that as part of my ordeal.
Really? Okay, so the reading of the will then, I'm assuming Harlan's CPA or executor of his estate, Alan Stevens, played by Frank Oz.
Making his what appearance on the
Yeah, who knows?
Changed the will has.
Informs the family that Harlan altered the will the week before his death, giving everything, the house, which he owned free and clear, $60 million in cash and investments, and sole ownership of Blood Like Wine Publishing Company to Marta Cabrera. The family gets Jack.
Oh.
This, I see, is absolutely a reward for Marta for being attentive and as kind to Harlan as she was, and to the family, and being well loved and respected by the entire family, except none of them know which Latin American country she's actually from. But the entire Trombi family turns on her like wolves. And
yeah,
that for me is why this was also part of the ordeal.
I agree completely. The family, like you said, turns against itself too. So it's really the unraveling of the family. That brings us to reward. Having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest. So obviously Marta's reward, as you mentioned, is the inheritance. Benoit's reward is a little thing, but it's actual physical evidence for the first time. He walks out onto the porch, Marta follows, Fran storms out, and then one of the dogs trots up and drops the piece of trellis at Benoit's feet.
Yep.
There it is. And Benoit looks up at the trellis, and then he has Marta lead him up to the top floor to the trick window. Carefully staying off the carpet, Benoit finds traces of mud on the rug and the windowsill. This physical evidence is a reward.
It's the first clue that somebody did something.
Yeah.
He says somebody who did not want to be seen went to great pains to get up to Harlan's room that night.
Boom. That's where I drew the line for the end of Act 2.
Okay. From Marta's perspective, I also included, as the family is accosting Marta as she's trying to leave the house, saying, I don't know what happened. I don't know why he's done this. I don't know why he's giving me your inheritance. She tries to get in the car. Her car won't start. The family is like pounding on the windows and screaming at her. Ransom pulls up in his BMW and beckons for her to get in the car, and he chariots her away from the chaos. Their discussion at the restaurant then, when he tricks her into telling him the truth, because first he feeds her a full plate of baked beans and sausage and then says, I also know that you vomit when you tell a lie, so you're going to tell me exactly what happened that night. And she unburdens, she unloads, and he says, I'm on your side. You're not going to give up the money. I'm going to help you get away with this, and then you're going to give me a cut of the inheritance, my share. Because F them, but I want my piece. So she gets an ally from her perspective.
I saw both of those things differently as part of Act 3. I don't know if you want me to... so that...
Well, no, I think if that's Act 3, we should break for our drink.
Yes, we should.
And then you come back and you tell me why this is road back stuff. I see why it is, because the truth of the matter, but from Marta's perspective at this point, she thinks this is a reward because she thinks she's getting an ally, but Ransom is a shapeshifter. So
well, let's take a break here and have a drink.
Put some booze in me.
Yes, yes, yes. Heavy pours, my friend, heavy pours. We'll be back. Welcome to the Vogler Lounge, where the cigar smoke is thick. What have you brought forth as your themed beverage for Knives Out?
I got a little bit lucky on this one. I searched simply Knives Out cocktail.
Ooh.
And I was rewarded for my simplicity. Triple Sec maker Cointreau has a themed cocktail called Whodunit that was inspired by this film.
What?
Yep. Inspired by the 2019 film Knives Out, a Cointreau forward sparkling Negroni variation so good you'll wonder who done it.
Damn.
Here is the bevy.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's like
it is
pink peachy color.
Bright pink color. Yeah, it is 2 ounces of blood orange soda, 1.5 ounces of Cointreau or Triple Sec, 1/2 ounce of fresh lemon juice, and 2 ounces of tonic water. So fill the glass with ice, dump in each of those ingredients, stir it up, and there you go. You have your bevy. So here is the whodunit. Very citrusy. So the blood orange soda I have is from San Pellegrino. I don't know. I know is it Brundberg? They make one too, but the grocery store didn't have that. They'd only had San Pellegrino. So it smells really good though. Oh man, that is fruity and delicious. It's a little bit sweet, but not too much. I'll be done with this by the time you finish talking about your beverage. I better pull back the reins on that one. Man, that is super, super good.
Or put on some wireless headphones and go pour yourself another while I ramble on about my drink.
That is really good. That is refreshing. That is a porch pounder right there. My good. What have you?
Dan, for my beverage, in honor of Benoit Blanc, I have a Sauvignon Blanc.
I almost did that.
And I found one called Vigilance.
Ooh.
Because a detective must always be vigilant.
Yes. Good find.
This is produced and bottled by Shannon Family of Wines in Kelseyville, California. They are famous for their sustainable, erosion-protected farmland. Very environmentally conscious. I don't have much experience tasting a Sauvignon Blanc. I have poured it chilled.
I'll be interested in knowing what you think then, if you have not had Sauvignon Blancs much before.
It actually smells a little fruity, like white grape juice, like Mott's white grape juice. I don't smell much else. I can't really distinguish any notes. I'm going to, I forgot to swish it. Do you do that with white wine? Do you swish it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. I'm swishing it. I'm looking through it. It is a very, very pale. It is quite dry. It smells sweet, but it's not sweet. It's a very gentle flavor. It's refreshing. It's not crisp. It's a little softer. I wouldn't say buttery. It dries out my tongue a little bit, but it's not terribly astringent. It's very mild, very mellow, drinkable on a summer day. I could see having some fish on the grill and a little Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah, it's very mellow, very easy drinking, not particularly powerful tastes.
So not real grapefruity. There was a long string of Sauvignon Blancs that I had back when Sauvignon Blanc was one of my favorite white wines that I really enjoyed. Had a real sharp grapefruity flavor to them.
I don't taste grapefruit. I taste, if I search for something fruity when I drink it, it tastes more sour, like maybe a little hint of green apple, maybe tart.
Okay.
It's very, but not powerful. It's very mellow. I expected something sweet. Like I said, I have not drunk much Sauvignon Blanc, but this is very mellow and inoffensive. It doesn't have any strong flavors. It's not bold. I would say it's very drinkable on a warm day. Dan, while I was on my road trip with my family, I went wine tasting in the Willamette Valley with the kids and Ami. Our friend works at a winery, and
that was fun for them.
They had juice for the kids, and it was lovely. It was lovely. It was a little 10 a.m. wine tasting, breakfast wines.
Where'd you go?
Rex Hill Winery, and they also produce on the same site, but in a different production facility, A to Z Wines, which is like a kind of a mass wine. Mm-hmm. Huge, beautiful facility. I think the A to Z Wine part produces like tens of thousands of cases of wine, so it's a very big. They import lots of grapes for that stuff, but the Rex Hill wine was it was not cheap. For my taste. They also made a really good sparkling wine, the best sparkling wine I've ever had. I do not like sparkling wine, and this was delightful. I don't. I've never had probably I've just been drinking cheap stuff or stuff at weddings, but it's either too sweet or too dry, and this was like perfectly balanced. I can't describe it. It was deliciously sweet, but also a little dry. The sides of the tongue got a little fuzzy. It was so the mouthfeel was so pleasurable to drink. And then they have a Pinot Noir and a Chardonnay, and that's it. A sparkling wine that's Pinot Chardonnay, and then Pinot and a Chardonnay. And the Pinot Noir was beautiful, not particularly bold or aggressive, just really well balanced. And so was the Chardonnay. And I've never spent that much money on wine before.
Did you bring some home, or
we brought some home? Your birthday is coming up, so you'll get to try these wines. But it was really, really nice, beautiful winery. We got the VIP tour, so we got to go into the bottling area, and he showed us the fermentation tanks and the barrels where they aged it. We got to go into the cellar where they had all the barrels. My son noticed that they had W on some of the barrels and R on some of the barrels, and our friend John said, "Yeah, that's so the interns know that white wine is in those barrels and red wine's in the other, because you don't want to put." Because apparently that happened once where somebody put red wine in a white wine barrel, and that was the end of their internship. And
a new exciting blend from Rex Hill Vineyards.
Very, very exciting. But we got to look at the vineyard. It was a great wine tasting visitation experience especially for people who don't know much about the process, which I didn't. So I got to see all the steps of the process. The staff was awesome. This was our friend from college who we hadn't seen since graduation. So it was just a great reunion, and just, he made a career out of wine. He said, "I came here as a side job to work on the weekends. I thought it'd be a fun hobby. Thought it'd be a fun hobby. Thought I'd get some." Wow, the wine's kicking in. Thought it would be a fun hobby, and I'd get some employee discounts. And 10 years later, he's running the show. So it was really cool.
Outstanding. I'm glad you had a good time.
It's all in prep for our couple's trip to Santa Barbara, which must happen in at least 2024. If it doesn't happen by then, you and I are quits.
Who are you going with?
You and Michelle.
Oh, us.
Yeah. I haven't seen enough of her since you and I had to go remote. So I think a quick weekend jaunt to Santa Barbara would be awesome. We drop the kids off at Grandma and Grandpa's and head up to Santa Barbara with you and do a lot of Ubers and a lot of wine drinking.
I'd be up for it.
All right. I might pour myself a little bit more vigilance, and let's head back into the studio.
Act 3 of the hero's journey begins with the road back. The hero is pursued by vengeful members of the Thrombey family, disturbed when they not necessarily seized the object of their quest in this particular story, but was granted a wonderful boon by an sweet old man that they had cared for. So the Thrombey family turns on Marta. Part of my reward we talked about last segment, Ransom taking Marta to the restaurant and that discussion there. Let's have you, though, talk about why that is part of your road back.
Okay, so Marta leaves the house. The inmost cave was that room full of angry family members. And they pursue her out of the house. Those are vengeful forces. And then her escape with Ransom, I saw pretty clearly as magical flight. She did not earn the booty. She shoplifted it, and now...
Well, she earned it.
She earned it, but not in their eyes, right?
Right, yeah.
She came, so the dragons are pursuing her. And then, as you mentioned, Ransom takes her to this restaurant. I didn't see this as her gaining an ally. He very clearly is extorting her. He's saying, in a very nice way,
True.
If you don't pay me off, I'll give you up. He doesn't say it like that. He says it in a more nicey, manipulative kind of way.
Yeah, you're right.
And he feeds her those beans and sausage ahead of time. He even orders an empty bowl, which so the waiter brings her plate. She hasn't eaten all day, so she's wolfing down this food. And then the server brings this empty bowl, which he kind of eyes. And then after she's eaten it and he starts interrogating her, he moves the plate away and puts the bowl in front of her like, I'll know. Yep. So I saw that as vengeful forces. He's now he's also been ripped off by her getting her inheritance, and he's coming after her.
That is what is happening, but I guess I thought that from her perspective, she's getting some assistance
I don't think she does think that. I mean, she's getting assistance, but she's clearly being extorted. She doesn't have much choice.
Yeah, but later on she thanks him and says, I couldn't have done this without you.
That's true. That's true.
That's why I saw. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I can see how that's a temporary alliance, which could be he is helping her get out of trouble in some way because he's going to help her get rid of this final, very damning piece of evidence. So I get that. I can buy that as part of reward.
Okay. So at the restaurant, at the conclusion of that scene,
Right.
Meg, who is the daughter of Toni Collette's character, Meg, who Grandpa Harlan was paying her college tuition for her, and because Mom was double dipping and having Harlan's accountant also send $100,000 a year to Joni's personal account.
By the way, a 4-year degree at Smith, which is where she's going, will cost you just south of $500,000.
Wow. Yeah, so
their current tuition is almost $55,000 a semester. So you'll end up paying almost $500,000 for your pot smoking granddaughter to go to Smith and get her degree in social justice or whatever.
So so
those are Jacob's words, the alt-right kid, not me.
Yeah, does he say how are things going with your your SJW degree?
Yeah, your SJW. Yeah, that's what he says.
All right. So anyway, so Meg has been cut off now because Mom was double dipping and Harlan has now cut them both off. So anyway, so she calls. Up until now, Meg has appeared to be the one member of the family who is almost a friend to Marta, not seen as the help, but she's a nice kid and she works hard. So we think of her as part of the family in really bold quotation marks.
Yeah, when we first meet Meg, she's defending her being called the help by the cops. She says, the help? Come on, really? That was so rude. And she's like defending. Yeah.
Yeah, they appear to be of similar age and probably have a more of a friend-like relationship. So she calls, asks Marta what she's going to do, and then says, I think you should renounce the inheritance and give it back to us. Then she hangs up and the camera pans over and we see the entire family standing behind her. Now, she told Marta, the family doesn't know I'm calling. Well, obviously they do. They put her up to it.
And she hung up the minute that Marta said, I'll take care of you. I'll pay your tuition. Click. I got what I want.
Right.
Screw you. Screw the rest of the family. I got mine.
The next day, Marta is awakened by her sister pounding on the bedroom door saying there's news cameras outside. What is going on? Marta says, I'm gonna sneak out the back. So as she goes into the back hallway of this, I don't know if this is like a town. I couldn't understand what it looked like. A house.
It's an apartment with front and back doors, but the back doors are the back hallway is like a common hallway.
It was bizarre. I didn't understand this, but we don't live in Massachusetts. Maybe things are just built different there. Who knows? So she goes out the back door and Walt is there waiting for her.
Oof.
And Walt confronts Marta and tries to reason with her and says, you should give the money back to the family. Harlan has put you in a really unfair position because think of all the increased scrutiny this is going to kick up. People are going to find out that your mother's an illegal alien. But with our family's resources, we can hire some good lawyers to protect you and your mother. Very veiled threat there, a little passive aggressive. And Marta says, oh, your family's resources? You mean my resources because Harlan just gave me all of your resources.
Boom,
and
roasted.
And then she ducks back. Yeah, boom, roasted. And then she ducks back into the apartment. Throws the mail on the kitchen counter and notices an unmarked envelope. She opens it up and in it is a photocopy of what appears to be the top of a toxicology report for Harlan from the medical examiner's office. And in handwriting, big block letters, it says, I know what you did.
And there's also a photocopy of her medical bag tag.
Yes.
Which is the hard evidence, right? The vials.
Marta then goes to Ransom's house, shows him the note. And he says, wow, this is going to show the morphine overdose.
Yeah.
But there's no demand, request for money. There's no request to meet somewhere. What's the point of sending this to you? cut to them pulling up in Marta's car in front of the Norfolk County Medical Examiner's office, which has been gutted by a fire.
Yeah.
Fire department is on scene trying to put out the fire. Lieutenant Elliott is there. Blanc and Trooper Wagner pull up, and we find out from Lieutenant Elliott that at 5 a.m., a fast fire gutted the office, destroying all physical evidence, as well as the security cameras that were on the outside of the building. So, Marta and Ransom are now huddled down in the front seat of her little car watching this fire at the medical examiner's office. And Ransom is saying, if this building has been destroyed and all the evidence inside, that means whoever your blackmailer is, the actual original document of the toxicology report is the only evidence left that is going to prove your guilt. You need to meet with this person, get that report back, and destroy it to save yourself. She checks her email on her phone and sees that there is a request to meet at a location at 10 a.m. that morning. It is currently 9:32. Then she notices Detective Blanc has spotted her.
Oops.
And starts running toward the car. So Marta peels out, drives away. The police pursue. There's a little chase through the town. She's taken her little tiny car, going through tight alleys, and the big police SUVs can't get through. But finally, the police trap her in an alley. They arrest Ransom because Great Nana, a character we haven't even mentioned yet, played by Kay Callan.
Yes.
Harlan's mother. Now, this is Harlan's 85th birthday. That he dies on his 85th birthday. And the question is, Great Nana, like, how old is she? And Jamie Lee Curtis's character says, we have no idea. But she seems to be an addled, not really all there old lady. She doesn't speak much. She just kind of stares into nothingness. But Detective Blanc has sat with her and just kind of charmed her, says, I really enjoy sitting here with you. It's very calming. And at some point, we don't see it, this all happens off camera, but at some point she told him Ransom came back that night. Now Detective Blanc thinks, oh, that must be whoever climbed up the trellis. So we're going to arrest Ransom and question him and see what he knows. So that's what the arrest is for. Of course, poor Marta thinks that she's sunk, but it's Ransom they take away.
And I love that at that scene after the car chase ends, Elliot says,
that was the dumbest car chase of all time.
Because it's like these two giant V6 SUVs and then Marta's crappy little Hyundai hatchback. And the other thing I loved about it is the driving a small car through an alley and the bigger car hits the big alley. That's been in several James Bond films. And shortly after this, Ana de Armas co-starred with Daniel Craig in No Time to Die.
Based on his recommendation.
Yes, right.
Okay, so Blanc gets in the car now with Marta.
Let's go to the police station. I want a full rundown on everything he said to you. I'll catch you up on where we're at.
But she says, well, I need to make a quick stop because it's almost 10 o'clock. So she's going to meet the blackmailer real quick, and he agrees. So they stop. She goes into the building. It is an abandoned laundromat, dry cleaner, something. It's dark. But she sees a person. Oh, first of all, she sees her medical bag.
Yeah.
Sitting by the back door. Then she sees a person sitting in a chair in the middle of the room. They're not responsive to her when she's talking to them. So she takes the cell phone flashlight, shines it in her face, and it's Fran, but she's unconscious and she's got a giant spider on her face, which kind of an unnecessary jump scare.
Ami hits me when she's scared, and she kept hitting me when we got to that part of the movie, just punching me like, what? Wow!
Marta sees an unmarked envelope sitting in Fran's lap, but it's empty. So she's thinking, okay, Fran must be my blackmailer. But there's also a vial of morphine and a needle lying on the floor. So Marta's thinking, Fran, because she knows Fran is a drug user because she's got the stash of marijuana in the house. And she's thinking, oh, I wouldn't have thought that Fran was into this hard stuff, but she stole my medical bag for the morphine and shot up here in this abandoned laundromat? Well, she's supposed to be blackmailing me? But anyway, so Fran suddenly wakes up. She starts gasping for breath, falls to the floor. Marta's trying to help her, and Fran is gasping, and she says, copy, stash, you did this, won't get away with it. Well, I mean, these are like strained because she's dying. So these are strained vocals here from her. Marta could run, but instead she dials 911 on her cell phone and begins performing CPR on Fran. The road back continues. At the hospital, Marta tells Benoit Blanc that she wants to tell the family the truth. He says that's not a good idea, but okay, fine. You tell me your side of the story as we head back to the house. They go into the house. Meg is there in the foyer of the home. She gives Marta a hug and says, I'm sorry I told them that your mom was an illegal alien. I didn't want to say it, but they made me.
Yeah.
And Marta is very forgiving. She says, it's okay. I get it. I understand. And then Meg says, boy, I'm going to need to hit Fran's stash after this. So that word stash, I think, and the connection to Fran clues Marta in. She says, I know where the tox report is. Goes into Fran's stash that's in the clock above the fireplace, and there's the original copy of the tox report. She hands it to Blanc, knowing that this is going to damn her. This is going to prove that she gave Harlan an overdose of morphine and killed him. And as he's reading the tox report, she goes into the living room and she's about to tell the family the truth, but he barges in, reams them all for mistreating Marta, and says she is not giving back the inheritance, and I'm going to recommend that Harlan's death is, in fact, a suicide. None of you are going to get anything.
You're a pack of vultures at the feast. Knives out, beaks bloody.
Well, you're not getting bailed out. Not this time.
And then Benoit Blanc leads Marta out of the room, and that was the end of the road back for me.
Yeah, I'm in. We haven't really mentioned Harlan's collector's baseball that sits on his desk that is kind of like a fidget spinner for him. He tosses it around and holds it. It has a couple of moments in the movie that act as really smooth transitions. When Richard goes into his study and discovers the letter, which we haven't really talked about, when Harlan confronts Richard in his study, one of the big arguments that becomes the reveal of Richard's motive, that he had discovered that Richard was having an affair and he wrote this letter and he was going to give it to Linda tomorrow. And you don't tell her, I will. And then Richard comes in later, ostensibly to steal the letter now that Harlan's dead and get rid of it so that Linda doesn't find out. And he finds the letter and he opens it and it's blank. Yeah. And he takes the baseball and tosses it out the window for some reason. And cut to the exterior, Benoit picks it up. In the scene, that one of the dogs trots up and drops the ball in Linda's hand. And I thought, it's not really explicit, but Richard read the letter, tossed the ball, and now the dog is giving the ball back to Linda right before she's about to discover the letter again. I thought that was a nice little circular bit of symbolism.
Yeah, that's right, because Richard looks at the letter, laughs, and just drops it on the desk and walks away. So it's still sitting there when Linda comes to return the ball to its home on Dad's desk and sees the letter there.
Yeah.
And she has said in the past, Dad and I had a special way of communicating.
Well, we'll get there, but yes, well, it's not. That's not happening yet. I'll get to that. Well, I agree with you about the road back. I think we're back in sync, which leads us to resurrection. The hero faces death one more time in an ordeal, battle, or showdown. This is definitely a showdown. I don't know that Marta is facing death, but certainly her innocence, Harlan's plan of her getting away with this, is at risk. So the resurrection of a murder mystery usually happens when the detective explains step by step how the crime unfolded and then reveals the murderer. Knives Out honors this trope in a fascinating and satisfying way. Blanc pulls Marta into the library and tells Wagner, keep the family out. And Marta is confused. She's like, why did you just tell them it was suicide? It's an immovable fact that I killed Harlan. And Benoit says, yes, that appears to fit. And then he revisits his hilarious existential donut analogy. The donut has a hole in its center. It is not a donut hole, but a smaller donut with its own hole. And our donut is not whole at all. So whoever hired Benoit wanted him to discover a crime that would invalidate the will. That's clear. But he was hired before the will was read. So the killer must have known the contents of the will beforehand. But one step further, he must have known, or they must have known, that Martha was responsible, and that by proving it, the Slayer rule, which we haven't established, the Slayer rule is if the person who stands to inherit the money killed the person, then they don't get the money.
Not even was found criminally, but even civilly responsible.
Right. Wrongful death, if they're held responsible in any way, they don't get their money. So they would have had to know that Marta stood to inherit everything, and that by proving that she killed him, the Slayer clause would kick in and the inheritance would revert to the family. So the killer had to know all of that. That's the donut hole inside the donut hole. Right. And Marta says, yeah, it was Fran. She was blackmailing me. But Benoit says, no, that doesn't track, because if Fran exposed Marta, she wouldn't get the blackmail money. And she was after money. And she didn't stand to inherit anything. So the answer is not so simple. The arc of this case is a tragedy of errors. There is one guilty party, and Wagner brings in Ransom, who's still playing the innocent, apologizes to Marta for snitching. Benoit confronts him, but Ransom denies being the one who hired him. And this is where Benoit unpacks the crime step by step until Ransom is backed into a corner. Now, I could go through and unpack the whole thing, but I'm not gonna. But he does the Scooby-Doo, here's what happened, right?
And really, part of the joy of watching this film and any murder mystery is watching the detective put all the pieces of the puzzle together and rip the mask off the murderer.
Yes.
That's the fun of it. And we just couldn't do it justice.
No.
In a podcast format. So
watching the
just
flashbacks,
watch the movie.
Just watch the movie again. After this has happened, after he's been backed into a corner, Marta gets a call from the hospital. She says, oh, Fran is alive and ready to talk. And then Ransom, realizing that Fran, if she's alive, will testify to everything.
Fran had sent the note, the I know what you did note, to Ransom, not to Marta.
Because I don't know if we covered this, but unbeknownst to Ransom, Fran saw him. The family was all at the funeral, and that's why Ransom wasn't at the funeral, so he could go to the house and collect the evidence, right? To get the vials and get the bag. And the dogs barked the night before, which is what Meg woke up, so he had to leave. So he comes back during the funeral, and Fran sees him. So she's blackmailing him like, I know you did it. Give me money.
Yep.
So realizing that Fran will testify to everything, he has nothing to lose. And he says, well, I might have murdered Fran, or I might have tried to murder Fran, and I might have burned the Emmys lab, but with good lawyers, I'll get off that. I'll get off. And then I'll come after you and your family. And then Marta projectile vomits on Ransom because she lied. Fran is dead. And Wagner just recorded his confession on his phone. Now Ransom is really screwed. He's got nothing to lose. He grabs a knife from the donut of blades and tackles her and stabs her with it. And they lie there staring at each other for a minute, and Marta's kind of gasping. And then he looks down at the knife and pulls it out, and it's a prop spring knife. And he sort of tests it like...
Weaky.
Shit.
And Harlan had said earlier in a scene that we didn't elucidate, when he's talking to Marta and explaining to her before he gets the lethal dose of morphine, that he was really glad he cut them all off. He feels like maybe he provided for them to keep them beneath him. He really is a self-realized guy and says, this is what's right. Now they'll be able to make their own way and become self-actualized people. It's essentially what he's saying. He says, I see so much of Ransom in me.
Jesus, Ransom. Oh, there's so much of me in that kid. Playing life like a game without consequence. Until you can't tell the difference between a stage prop and a real knife.
It was a little bit forced, but he was making an analogy. And of course, at the end, Ransom can't recognize a prop knife from a real one. So he fails to kill Marta. So Marta escapes death because she hasn't really been stabbed because Ransom was so arrogant and foolish. Marta wins, Benoit wins, resurrection has occurred.
This brings us to the final segment, the freedom to live or return with the elixir. Having won a precious treasure or reward, the hero now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. So the crime has been solved. The police arrest Ransom for the murder of Fran because He met with Fran in the laundromat and shot her up with 100 milligrams of morphine to kill her. Linda finds the letter that Harlan told Richard he was going to give to her if he didn't confess to adultery. And it's blank. But if we remember, she had said earlier in the film that she and her dad had a secret way of communicating. So as the police are walking her son to their police cruiser, she takes a cigarette lighter and heats the paper, revealing the message. And her father is telling her that her husband is having an affair. And Blanc tells Marta,
I want you to remember something that's very important. You won not by playing the game Harlan's way, but yours. You're a good person.
That is a question that has come up throughout the film. Of not a question, but the subject throughout the film is Marta being a good person, a better person than everybody else. She doesn't smoke the marijuana. When she's offered alcohol at the party, she says no thank you. When Harlan wants to play Go and drink more, she says no, I had one glass, but I'm on duty, so that's it. I'm done. I can't drink anymore. She doesn't drink at the restaurant with Ransom, even though he's got a wall of beer bottles built up in front of him. So there's a lot of suggestions of purity regarding Marta. So Blanc says, you are a good person, and that's why you're the victor here. And she says, I feel like I feel bad for these people. Should I help them now that she's, got all this money? And I love his response. He's like, nah, I've got an opinion on that, but I think you'll follow your heart. And then we cut to the family all standing in the driveway watching Ransom be put into the police car, and they all turn around and look up at the second floor balcony, and she's standing there wrapped in a blanket holding Harlan's My House, My Rules, My Coffee mug. And she stares down at them as they stare up at her, and she takes a sip from that mug, and we cut to black.
I love that shot where they pull back through the family. It's almost like a synchronized swimming shot from a 40s musical.
Yes.
As they pull back and each family member turns and looks up at her.
Yes.
Rian Johnson got so much S for his Star Wars movie, but he's a brilliant director. He's absolutely fantastic. I love his stuff. Love his writing. Love his directing.
Friends, thank you for untangling this wicked web with us. We hope you enjoyed it. Please share us with your friends and family. Like and subscribe, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And if you would like to support the podcast, visit patreon.com/Heroes Journey Podcast.
We are grateful to all the patrons who make this show possible, including our demigod tier patrons, John Peterson Jr., from the beginning, everybody. Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin. So many of our patrons who are demigod patrons have been there from the first time we opened Patreon. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, Jeff Scott, Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon, Ami Garvin, Salathiel Jones, Jasmine and Pete Hudson, Mike and Dan's mom, Zarzana, and Randy Sparks.
You're gonna get another text message.
This is how I know she's listening, is I get a text message the day after the episode comes out. That's how I communicate with your mom. Staying in touch.
Thank you to Taylor Jordan for composing our theme music. Thank you to Jason Dorff for the episode artwork. Links to their portfolios can be found on the About page of heroesjourneypodcast.com.
The trademark Hero's Journey is used under license from the Joseph Campbell Foundation. Visit www.jcf.org to learn about how the foundation promotes and celebrates the work of Joseph Campbell.
Knives Out is copyright 2019, Lionsgate Films, Inc., and MRC2 Distribution Company. Thanks again for listening. Until next time,
journey on.
We gotta do this more often.